Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is the amazing news that Glasgow City itself is going to create a £110 million black hole caused by housing asylum seekers in this city. Now, normally in my videos, what I'll do at this point is I'll put up news reports to, use as reference to the story here. Unfortunately, due to limitations placed on me with bail conditions and undertakings due to a continuing legal issue I face, I cannot talk about certain parts of this story. I cannot discuss certain people involved in this story. Therefore, I will not even put the story up online, because if I scan by the bits that talk about things that I can't talk about due to my undertaking, it could end up in bother. Even the fact that I don't say the words, I would be broadcasting them on social media. So please forgive me. So this story, which I have got, you can find it in the Scottish Daily Express. The headline is, Glasgow is facing £110 million bill to house asylum seekers as city chiefs warn of crash crisis. Now, the city chiefs that I'm about to discuss, for legal purposes, I want to point out, are not councillors. These are people employed by the council. And it's an exclusive by the Scottish Daily Express, where they say, as the City Council seeks a pause in asylum seekers from October, this is the council that have set themselves up as a sanctuary, are now asking for a pause. The housing bill is expected to entirely wipe out Glasgow's rainy day fund and then blow a huge black hole in future budgets. Now, unfortunately, the only way Glasgow City Council have creating money, if they need more, is through council tax, which means the people of Glasgow will inevitably face hikes in their council tax bills because of the way the city has managed for a long time the asylum issue in Scotland. And we're for a long time, in long periods, we're the only city council or any regional council who accepted asylum cases. Now, this was down to two things, and it was driven by the SNP. There have been previous asylum schemes whereby Westminster would pay money directly to the councils to allow them to put up asylum seekers, etc. And the other schemes, they would pay companies like Mears to put up the asylum seekers. So the money would not go directly to the councils. Now, for a long time, and this comes from people who work within the Home Office, the SNP were infuriating these people, because what they would do is they would paint this picture of asylum seekers welcome, and everything's cuddly and rosy, and we want these people here. But they were instructing the councils only to accept cases where the money was being paid directly to the councils. And that became the minority of cases, because more and more cases were getting given to Mears Group. Because each different, like the Syrian refugees, Ukrainian refugees, all these different programmes could have different ways they were funded. So the SNP were saying, if Westminster are giving the money direct to our councils, then we'll take that. But if they're giving the money to third parties and not our councils, then we don't really want them. So that's why you ended up with this situation, this bizarre situation in Scotland, where the government, or the Scottish government, the SNP, were telling us, we love asylum seekers, yet we're turning their back and infuriating the people that worked in the Home Office and alongside the Home Office to try and house these people. They were playing politics with these people, telling everybody outside how wonderful they were and trying to paint this picture. So in Scotland, Glasgow was, for a long, long time, was the only place that was taking any asylum seekers. But that's not the picture that was painted. And now those decisions are coming back to haunt Glasgow. And the people who are always end up paying are the normal people who go about their day, try to make a living, try to make their communities a bit better, try and afford a wee holiday a year and stuff like that. because the council tax bills will inevitably come up. So the story continues. Glasgow City Council finance bosses, not councillors, these are people that work in the council, are warning of a £110 million black hole in the local authorities' coffers, driven largely by the cost of housing asylum seekers. The desperate forecast put before councillors at a crunch meeting at the city chambers on Thursday in a report by Robert Emmett, who is the Executive Director of Financial Services, I stress, not a councillor. He warns that a saving of at least 12% will be required, which would mean further job losses and cuts to services. This is 12% off other things that we spend money on, like cleaning your bins and things. The city's top bean counter concludes the latest projections forecast a budget gap of £109.7 million for the next 2 years, 2026 to 28. Before any council tax increases, with £65.7 million of this relating to a pressure associated with the homelessness. The SNP-run council has asked the Home Office for a pause in dispersal of new arrivals to the city from October, and also an end to the requirement to house asylum seekers moving to Glasgow from elsewhere in the UK. Now, this is down to a rule that we've got here that we don't have in the rest of the UK, where there's a legal requirement on the council to house homeless people. So what's happened is asylum seekers from other parts of the UK have taken advantage of this. And although they've been put originally in one place, if it didn't suit them, they've turned up in Glasgow and said, I'm an asylum seeker. There's a law there that says you must provide me with a roof over my head. I would love that right to be given to all our homeless people. That would be kind of good. I wouldn't mind paying a wee bit more of my community charges for that. That would be all right with me, right? But it's not. It's for people who have been in another area in the United Kingdom, right? So we're told they've had to flee for the fear of their life from certain parts of the world, landed in Europe where their life's not in danger, right? But still decided to come here and claim asylum here when they've not left a risk to life situation. And then they go, well, if I go to Glasgow, I can get a house, I just demand one. And that's why Glasgow has got this £110 million problem. So the figures go. This has infuriated campaigners, including the Scottish Refugee Council, whose chief executive has warned we will do more harm than good and potentially lead to a rise in people sleeping in the streets. Now, only if they come here. They don't need to. They're coming from other areas in the United Kingdom. But the Scottish Refugee Council are saying that this will be bad. So we're just to keep charging people in Glasgow more money. So the Scottish Refugee Council will be quite happy. Now, Mr. Emmett's report states that in 24-25, the overspend on homeless from those granted to remain, that's not our own homeless, right, was £27 million. And although £12.4 million of this was paid from council's cash reserves, leading to a net cost of 14.6. Well, there is no net cost of 14.6. The net cost £27 million in 24-25. He continues, unless, and this is where the 110 million bit comes in, unless there's a change in policy, projections are that we will rise to £43 million in 25-26 and £66 million in 26-27. That, if you put it together, and they've rounded them down, that would be 109 million. There'll be some dot thingy, it's rounded up to 110 million over the next 2 years, if nothing changes. It is estimated that around 56% of the application from those granted leave to stay in 25-26 will arise from individuals granted leave to remain whilst in Glasgow, with the balance, that's nearly half of them, due to applications choosing to settle in Glasgow from other parts of the UK out with Scotland. That's the ones I was talking about that will come due to this weird law that we've got that the rest of the UK doesn't have, right? Overall, this means a bill for this current year and the next financial year of 109 million, even if the council's request for a pause in new asylum is granted, the bill for this year and next is still going to come in to £50 million. So we're going to be £50 million worth off, minimum. And if the Westminster can't say, well, we can't stop sending asylum seekers because we can't stop the boats, right? Then, and the Labour government have already told us that everybody in the UK will need to take their fair share of asylum seekers. Then we're looking at 110 million or 109 point something, right? The report goes on, a pause in both dispersal to Glasgow and the requirement to house applicants from out with Scotland would, if implemented from October 2025, reduce the estimated costs to 36 million in 25-26 and 13 million in 26-27, pennies under the 50 million quid. However, there is no guarantee that the UK will agree to pause, especially given the huge increase in asylum claims from small boat crossings and the protests over housing asylum seekers seen in England. So what they're saying here is, because England's making a bigger fuss about it with protesting, they'll maybe just shove more up here. Scottish people kind of need to do something about it. And I have seen great efforts by the good people of Aberdeen, Falkirk and other places, but those two in particular, over the last while. And what I will say is I think Aberdeen certainly wins the award for consistency of protest, and Falkirk probably wins the award for the largest single protest. And these people are people in the local communities who are, and you can hear it if you want to open your ears, you will hear people from the new media, people like myself, John Watt in particular, DJR Media, all these people and others that I can't think off the top of my head, are out there and they're putting microphones in people's faces and asking them, why are you here? And you will hear people from the local areas with horrific stories. And well done those people. And well done the people covering these sort of things, because the mainstream don't, or when the mainstream do cover them, they try to paint it on one side of the street are all bad people, and the other side of the street are all brilliant people. And it's a bit bonkers. We then in this story go on to we have quotes from people who I am not allowed to produce material and even talk about them. So I'm going to need to miss out a lot of the quotes from certain people in this story due to the undertaking I've had, which got me out of police cell about 8 to 10 weeks ago. So let's see what I can't read that, can't read that. There's another one, I can't read anything he said, blah, blah, blah. But what I will say, it's really bizarre when you read some of the comments from people who do actually take to the streets and tell us refugees are welcome here, and they're trying to play mental gymnastics, Olympic level mental gymnastics at that. They try and justify why we kind of need to keep them coming, because these people can't say, look, it's there in black and white, we can't afford this, right? We just can't cope with the numbers. They couldn't say that, because it would go against what they've done for years by even taking to the streets with banners saying refugees welcome here. These are people in power that I can't talk about, right? So they can't do that. So they use some absolutely mental gymnastic efforts to kind of come up with quotes for these media outlets, asking for their opinion on it, which I can't cover. And it's absolutely laughable that these people just cannot actually repeat the truth. That the fact is that Glasgow, because we have had such a woke approach, has almost bankrupted itself. And if you have a calculator handy, Google the amount of houses in Glasgow, the amount that actually pay council tax, and whatever that number is, divide 110 million by that number, and you'll figure out how much it will cost your average person who is eligible to pay council tax in Glasgow to keep this thing, this industry that we've created, keep going. And it's a joke. So if you want others to know this story, click the thumbs up, put comments below, and hit the share button. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. However, the most important thing of all, unless you're the type of person that comes here deliberately when you're not leaving a place when you're in danger to take benefits of the ridiculous rules that Glasgow City Council have, if you are the type of person that keeps continuing to say, we'll have more please, when it just beggars belief, then not you. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio bye now.